Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Johnny, I like to talk about games, and today I want to talk about why I think games are just the better medium when you compare it to movies or shows. And I have two specific reasons that I want to give you today, and I want to hear from you if you agree or disagree. The first big factor is interactivity. Is that a word? Yes, I think it is. And this second part is how much time you spend with characters, which we're gonna call bonding. So for the first one, let's talk about interaction and why it matters. When we think about a traditional movie or TV show, you're a completely passive watcher, of course, and it's obvious that with a game, you have a much more active role, and that's bound to make you a bit more engaged in the experience, right? You're just having that level of interaction with it. In some cases, you're actually impacting the outcome of the story and making some kind of decisions. Like, we can think about Fallout games where, in New Vegas, for example, there's one pivotal decision that stuck with me that I know many of you will remember if you've played that game, where you can actually decide the outcome or the future of an entire town, right, based on your decision there. We have other games like Mass Effect where some of your decisions will mean characters get to live or die, right? Who lives or dies, who stays with you for the journey. Some outcomes as well for different quests, and actually big impacting decisions there. Now, for me, that's a big deal, and I want to see that more in games. I think that lately, games have actually been playing it quite safe with their choices or decision making, to the point where I miss some of those big, high stakes things that really add to the replayability of the game. You would really want to replay it to see what happens when you pick that other person or that other outcome. Not only that, but you usually also get to fight as the protagonist. So let's think to The Witcher 3, where you're battling it out, and for hours on end you are Geralt fighting the monsters and all of that. That really puts you into the frame of being that character and being much more engaged with what's going on. And if you like the combat, like I did for Witcher, or we could talk about more combat-centric games like Dark Souls, there isn't really a big narrative there unless you really dig for it. But just the fact that you're immersed in the combat itself is such a meaningful experience for a lot of us as well, that when you think back to it, it does develop this emergent narrative, if you will, within your brain. It has nothing to do with the game actually having a powerful story or anything like that. It's really just about your own narrative that you develop as you become stronger and progress in that world. So we've established that interactivity is a big one, and that it's also a word, I'm pretty sure. But, comment down below and let me know if I got that right. But the second pillar that I want to highlight here is how much time we get to spend with characters. This includes the protagonist, but also the NPCs, your companions, right? Even enemies, villains that you get to kind of oppose during your journey. I can think right now of Final Fantasy XIV, where Emmett Selk is such a powerful and awesome villain that mixes kind of humor with actually being competent at what he's trying to do, and being a strong, powerful enemy too. That's actually a great example of a character that I sorely miss now that I got past that quest line, where he's no longer a part of it actively, right? I actually miss that character, which is crazy because, Final Fantasy XIV is an MMO. We all know the story in MMOs isn't always the greatest or the most meaningful. It is all about that grind, right? That moment to moment. But I actually found that Shadowbringer's arc was meaningful, and I actually miss that character. But we can think about companions that also were very meaningful. You got to spend a lot of time with them, and maybe, you lost them along the journey, right? I remember playing Mass Effect. I loved Garrus, right? Garrus was like my right-hand man, not like that. And when I lost him due to, something, one of my decisions actually, right? I believe you end up losing him. Uh, in some cases, I think it highly depends on what you choose in the game. So hopefully that's not a big spoiler. But that was heart wrenching. I was like actually impacted by that. And it really makes me think of how much the time spent with characters has a big impact on whether or not you care about them. And maybe it explains why in movies it's kind of hard to care for me about characters in a movie unless it's a well established franchise or character that I've already consumed in other media or other movies, right? Maybe it's a Batman movie, so you're already a Batman fan. You've watched all the Batman stuff. You're going into it with already a well established caring for the character. But if it's a fresh IP and you only have 2 hours or whatever it is to make you care about a character from start, it's actually really challenging, which is why I think shows are now the kind of go to option for media because, let's say that you have 12 episodes or whatever it is, that is actually a lot more time to have you spend some quality time, some bonding time with your characters and get to care about them, right? Give you some reasons to actually relate or really honestly give a fuck about whether they live or die. I think that's the big difference here. And when you then take it at another level, right, from a show where you spend 12 episodes, so maybe 12 hours total or something with those characters, when you bring that to 60 hours or even 100, when you talk about a Persona game or something like that, you spent 100 hours with that protagonist, with those companions. That's gonna make a big difference for me. If I think back to Persona 5, which took me over 100 hours to beat, right? Even though I hated Ryuji, that still left a mark in me, that character, because of how much time I spent with that dude. All the shenanigans, all the missions, all the struggles, and all the stuff that you go through with those NPCs, it leaves a mark on you much more than something short like a show or a movie can do, I think. So just by nature, it's almost like, it's not playing fair because you just have so much more time to play with that I think is just a lot easier for you to remember those companions and for them to leave a more lasting impact on you. However, there is also the drawback of such a bigger time frame, and that is the pacing. So games notoriously can have terrible pacing at times where, you're 20 hours in and you still have something like 40 hours left in the game. It's just not clicking with you. You can't bring yourself to care about anything that's going on. The gameplay is getting old and then you drop out, right? That can also happen. So, in a way, shows or movies as well have a much easier time keeping your attention because it's a much, smaller time frame. It's much easier for them to have a punchy segment of action and exposition in a way that it all kind of clicks and it's much more condensed, right? Whereas in games, we tend to have these longer expositions and arcs and things like that, with the payoffs being much further away than they would be in a movie or something like that. So, both media formats or all media formats have their pros and cons, but I would say that when a game clicks with you and you stick with it to the end, it has a much higher chance of actually being a very meaningful experience to you compared to a movie or a show. And I will caveat this by saying that movies or shows that have a pre-existing franchise or IP that you already know and love, you're already invested, those have a much higher chance of being memorable, right? So we could talk about The Lord of the Rings. It's already a well-loved book series. Many people go into it with the expectation, right? Or the pre-existing knowledge. Or we could talk about Harry Potter, where fans have for years read the books. They grew up with the whole material, right? They know everybody, they know everything about that world. And then all of a sudden there's a movie, boom, the movie explodes, right? And we get it, it makes perfect sense. But for a game that's trying to do that from scratch, let's say, they have a big task before them to build all this foundation, make you care about the characters and all this stuff. So with all that said, I want to hear from you specifically, as always. Tell me, first of all, if you got to this point, thank you so much for enjoying the content and supporting what I do here on Twitch and on the podcast with the guys. I really appreciate it. But tell me down below if you think games are actually the best medium for telling stories, or the more condensed format for a story actually sticks with you more and you don't care about spending more time with characters necessarily. And with that, I just want to remind you that we stream on Twitch 3 days a week. Currently, we're doing BioShock Infinite and League of Legends. So if you want to stop by and chat with me, ask questions, whatever it is, you'll have my full attention over there. Links for that down below. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.